Welcome, brave souls, to the fire's flickering light, where shadows dance and whispers of the unknown drift on the wind. I'm Sam Hain, your guide through the eerie tales that haunt the darkest corners of your imagination. Tonight, we gather around the flames to uncover stories that will chill your bones, make your heart race, and keep you looking over your shoulder. From ancient legends to ghastly encounters, these tales are not for the faint of heart. So, stoke the fire, lean in close, and prepare yourself for a journey into the realm of the strange and the sinister. Are you ready to be afraid? Let the storytelling begin.
The crisp, autumn air carried the scent of pine and frost as Andy and Danny hoisted their packs and set out on the trail leading to Ben Macdui. At 18 and 19, they were full of youthful bravado, though their personalities couldn't have been more different. Andy, impulsive and quick to react, often relied on Danny's calm, measured approach. Danny's acceptance into the military loomed over their friendship, making this trip feel like a farewell to their carefree days. Cairngorms loomed large in the distance, their jagged peaks crowned with streaks of early snow. Andy adjusted the strap of his pack as he followed Danny up the trail. The crunch of their boots against the frosty ground, the only sound for miles. It was a rare, clear morning, with the sun casting a golden glow over the autumn foliage. But the mountains seemed indifferent to the weather, its cold, brooding presence a constant reminder of the challenges ahead. Last big adventure before you're off to boss people around in uniform, Andy joked, though there was a tinge of sadness beneath his words. More like getting bossed around, Danny replied, smirking. His confident stride showed no hesitation, even as the trail grew steeper. By the time they reached the village nestled at the mountain's base, the sun was already beginning its descent. The pub they chose had a low-beamed ceiling and smelled of wood smoke and damp oil. Locals sat in quiet clusters, their voices low, the occasional glance cast toward the two outsiders. Ben Macdui, Danny said casually to the bartender, as if the mountain were just another hill to climb. Any advice? The room fell silent. A grey-haired man in the corner sat down his pint with a deliberate slowness. If the weather turns, he said, his voice rasping with age, stay clear of the black Bothy. Andy perked up. What's that? The man's gaze was sharp as a knife. Bad place. Some say cursed. Hikers vanish. Some come back, but they're not right. He hesitated, then leaned closer. It's the Grey Man. He haunts the mountain, and the Bothy's his hunting ground. Danny rolled his eyes, but Andy couldn't ignore the genuine fear in the man's expression. Old myths, Danny said dismissively once they were outside. Nothing to worry about. Andy wasn't sure. The weather changed with startling speed, as it often does in the Highlands. By late afternoon, thick clouds rolled in, swallowing the trail in a grey mist. The wind picked up, carrying a chill that bit through their jackets. Andy shivered. We should find shelter. I don't like this. Danny checked the map, his brow furrowed. The Bothy's not that far. We'll stay there tonight. Get an early start in the morning. Bothy emerged from the mist like a forgotten relic. Its dark, stone walls blending seamlessly with the bleak landscape. Its roof sagged under the weight of moss, and its windows stared out like empty eye sockets. This is it? Andy asked, reluctant to step closer. Danny shrugged. It's a roof over our heads. Inside, the air was damp and heavy. The darkness seemed unnatural, swallowing the beam of their headlamps. The walls were covered in crude scratches, marks that might have been writing or just desperate clawing. Andy's flashlight caught a phrase etched deeply into the stone near the door. Beware the eyes in the dark. He stared at it, unease coiling in his gut. Danny dismissed the warning with a chuckle. It's just graffiti, Andy. Come on, help me set up. They laid out their gear and lit a small lantern. Its light barely reached the corners of the room, as if the darkness was alive, resisting intrusion. Danny fell asleep quickly, but Andy lay awake, listening to the wind howl outside. Andy didn't remember falling asleep, but he woke with a start. At first, he thought it was the wind that had roused him, but then he heard it, slow, deliberate footsteps crunching on the gravel outside. His heart thudded in his chest. The sound grew louder, closer, until it stopped just outside the door. Andy held his breath as the door creaked open. A figure stepped inside, its movements unnaturally smooth. It was tall and gaunt, its pale face almost skeletal, most terrifying were its eyes, hollow and faintly glowing, like dim coals in a dying fire. He froze, unable to look away. When the figure stepped toward him, Andy finally found his voice. "Danny," he whispered hoarsely, shaking his friend's shoulders. "Danny, wake up." Danny sat up groggily, then froze as he saw the intruder. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it raised an arm, pointing towards the mountain's summit. The gesture was slow and deliberate, heavy with unspoken meaning. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the figure dissolved into the shadows. "Danny," Andy said, his voice trembling, "we need to leave." Danny hesitated, glancing at the doorway where the figure had vanished. "It's just a trick of the mind," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. Before Andy could argue, a new sound filled the Bothy. A low, rhythmic thumping, like massive footsteps. It was coming from outside, but it felt like it was everywhere at once. Danny grabbed the lantern. "We're not staying here. Let's go." They stumbled into the stormy night, the wind howling around them. The thumping grew louder, accompanied by a sense of something vast and ancient moving through the mist. Andy glanced over his shoulder and saw it, a towering figure, its form shifting like smoke, its glowing eyes fixed on them. The grey man. "It's following us," Andy whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. "No," Danny said, his jaw tight. "It's driving us." The realization hit them both at once. The creature wasn't attacking. It was herding them, forcing them toward a sheer cliff edge. The edge loomed ahead. A jagged line where the ground ended and the abyss began. The grey man's presence grew heavier, its towering form blocking out the sky. Andy fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of its gaze. It was more than just fear. It was despair, as if the creature's very existence drained the will to live. "Get up," Danny shouted, grabbing his arm. "We're not dying here." Suddenly, the ghostly climber appeared, stepping out of the mist. His hollow eyes locked onto the grey man, and he raised his arm as if commanding it to stop. The grey man froze, its glowing eyes narrowing. For a moment, the two figures faced each other in a silent standoff. Then, with a deafening roar, the grey man dissolved into the mist, vanishing as if it had never been. The ghost turned to Andy and Danny, his expression calm and resolute. He nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of their survival, before fading away. The first rays of dawn broke over the mountain as Andy and Danny descended, their bodies aching but their minds too numb to process what had happened. "We are never coming back here," Andy said, his voice hoarse. Danny nodded silently, his usual confidence replaced by a quiet solemnity. They told no one about their encounter, knowing that they would be dismissed as fools or liars. But the memory of the grey man and the ghostly climber stayed with them, a reminder that some legends are real, and some places should be left undisturbed. In the years to come, whenever the legend of the Black Bothy was mentioned, they couldn't help but feel a chill. Somewhere in the midst of Ben Macdui, the grey man still roamed, and the ghost of the climber watched over those who dared venture too far into its domain.